Hello, and thanks for checking out the Six Sigma tool guide. Today we're going to take about 10 or 15 minutes to talk about the fishbone, a very popular tool in the Six Sigma toolbox. It's also known as an Ishikawa diagram. It's really a study in cause and effect, and it's a tool that's meant to help you understand what the contributing factors are towards a specific output. Either name is fine, fishbone or Ishikawa diagram. Fishbone is a little more descriptive and easier to remember. Ishikawa is more fun to say. Alright, so let's get started. This is the template itself. This tool is a pretty popular tool for getting an idea of how various inputs impact some effect or some output. The template resembles the skeleton of a fish. That's where we get the name. The head of the fish is where we're going to put the result or the output of a process that you're working on. And then each bone is going to be a category of inputs, things that contribute to the result. And while there are several versions or themes to be used in here, we're going to use a very common one which uses the categories of men, material, methods, machines, metrics, and places. This will all make more sense as we get deeper into it. Here is a fishbone. Right there we're going to put the head of the fish or the output of the result. This is also sometimes called the big Y. All the little contributing factors are going to go on these bones. These are sometimes called the little X's. We won't get too much into the Y and X terminology. That comes from this math equation which says Y is some function of X. What that really means is output is some function of input. Said another way, what you get out of something really depends on what you put into it. We won't get too deep into the math on this one with the X's and Y's. We do have some other tutorials that get a little deeper into the math side of things. Today we're just using the fishbone really as a brainstorming tool. So when might I use a fishbone? There's lots of opportunities and lots of applications for this, especially if you're working on a formal Six Sigma project. One opportunity is before you document a current as-is process in a flowchart. Using this tool along with subject matters is a great way to find some of the less obvious pieces of the puzzle. If you're doing root cause analysis, you can use a defect or a bad thing that you're trying to avoid as the head of the fish, and then brainstorm on all the small contributors that contribute to that defect. And anytime you really just want to flesh out a process, if you just want to get a better understanding of what contributes to something and all of the small pieces that come into play. So here we're going to walk through an actual fishbone. At the head of the fish, here we have the output or the effects. And we're going to load this guy up with some bones. Each one of these bones is going to represent a category of inputs. We're going to use men, methods, machines, metrics, places, and materials. This format is sometimes called as the 5 M's and a P. I think if anyone could think of a word that means places that starts with the letter M, it probably would have been replaced by now. All of these things are just various categories of potential inputs that typically contribute to an output. These are pretty good categories to use. Most processes you look at are going to have these elements involved in them. So here we have a blank fishbone diagram. At the head here we have the output and the result. We're going to put something specific there and pretend for a moment that we work for a pizza joint and that we're part of a project team that is trying to improve pizza delivery time. So that's what's going to go at the head of our fish. That's the result we're trying to achieve. That's the effect we're trying to achieve. That's the output, is improved pizza delivery time. And then we're just going to start filling in these bones with some of these contributing factors. Under the men section, we'll throw up drivers and customers and cooks. we get to places, we'll talk about delivery zones probably, range, how far is too far to try and deliver and meet a specific deadline. Do we need a remote location somewhere in maybe a busy area where we know we'll have a lot of deliveries? Something like that. Again, we're just brainstorming on ideas. We get up here to metrics. This is a really important one. If our goal is to improve pizza delivery time, if that's the effect we're trying to create, is that pizza delivery time, is that metric recorded anywhere? Is it known? Do people have bonuses based on it? Is it something that's known in our organization? Does the average pizza delivery time, is that a number that everyone in the organization knows? Under GPS, we'll talk about, and machines is really any type of system. So machines, systems, automation, anything like that. In this case, we might talk about GPS. Are the drivers' GPSs up to date? Is there maybe some online tracking available for the customer? They could check in and see how close their pizza is. Under materials, are there ingredients, different ingredients that we could use that would cook faster? Again, just brainstorming, there's no bad ideas. Under methods, should we have pre-cooked pizzas? Should we have pre-cooked pizzas in a roaming van? That might not sound like a great idea, but it's worth putting on the board just to go through this exercise. Under machines, should we invest in a crystal ball? Someone will say something like this. If you've got a group of people working on this project, that's fine. You should put that up on the board. It's funny. It'll make the room laugh, and it will make people start thinking about what are some realistic alternatives to a crystal ball. So we talked a minute ago on the last slide about getting the magic on the board. You might also remember somebody noted, hey, should we have specific pre-made pizzas in a roaming van? Which doesn't sound like a great idea right off the bat. However, once you start talking about crystal balls, someone in the room may say, you know what we could do? We don't have a crystal ball, but if we kept a database of our customers' buying habits, we could probably start making predictions based on the day of the week and different zip codes, the time of day, and suddenly the idea of a van with pre-made pizzas is maybe not such a bad idea. If we know that on a certain day of the week, we're going to sell X number of pepperoni pizzas to a specific time zone between certain hours, does it make sense to maybe have some extra hot and ready pepperoni pizzas in that van? So maybe that pre-made pizza in a roaming van is not such a bad idea as long as we're able to create that crystal ball or something that replicates the crystal ball. It's easy when you're in one of these sessions with a group of subject matter experts to get a little off the scope of the original plan. We were talking about how to improve pizza delivery time, but once this idea of a roaming van was brought up, now we suddenly have people saying, hey, why don't we have a roaming van that parks downtown after the bars close? Lots of pizzas to be sold there. Why not at the stadium after a ball game have a van ready with pizzas? Why not at an office park around lunchtime? These are all, great ideas. They're not really a part of the scope of the initial project to improve pizza delivery time, but there's no reason in the world we can't, sideline this stuff and someone in the room can walk away with some action items to maybe start up a parallel project that's also going to help the organization. So in the pizza example, we looked at using a fishbone to try and find ways to make something even better. How do we take this positive output, pizza delivery time, and how do we do that even better? Another way to use the tool is to take a defect, some type of negative output, and say, how do we make this happen less often? How do we improve it by removing the negative? We're going to look at a Transamerica example here in a moment where we did just that. We took a negative output and we said, how do we make this happen less often? In this example, a little background on it, our new initiative had recently taken place where the call center was actually processing MonLife loans on the phone as the call occurred. It was part of an initiative for same-day service, and because it was a brand new process, there was a brand new QA process also being built around it. So this was a great opportunity to take something that's kind of brand new and flesh it out within the first 30 or 60 days and fine-tune all the moving parts on it. In this case, they were looking to how do we minimize delays to the loan approval process. That is what's going to be at the head of this fishbone, is how do we minimize delays to the loan approval process. So here we have another fishbone, another Ishikawa diagram. This is real life. This is actually something a Blue Belt team at Transamerica was working on for the Mon Life product in the loan approval process. We were looking for causes to delays to the loan approval process in this case. So everything you see over here under metrics and machines and men, places, materials, and methods, these are all brainstorming things that contribute to a delay to the loan approval process. And we noticed a couple patterns, one of which being error rates and just mistakes at the front end of the process are one of the largest contributors to some type of delay in the loan approval process. So what I've done here, this is the same list. I highlighted some things in blue and some things in red. The things that are in blue are directly related to avoiding the problem in the first place, avoiding that mistake or avoiding that error that causes a delay. The things in red are all things related to once an error does happen, how do we react to it, and how can we fix that error with as little impact to the customer as possible. So now we have the lists. Like I said, kind of two sets of things. The things in red really are about how do we react as an organization once an error is made. And the things in blue are really related to how could we avoid that mistake or avoid that error in the first place. So we now have a list of inputs that we know has direct impact on the head of our fish, which is a delay to the loan approval process. So based on these inputs, the team was able to document the current process, identify a few holes that contributed to that result, or that output of delays to the loan approvals, and it came up with a list of things that they can do, actionable items that can address this issue. One is assigning ownership of training to a single person in the call center. That person is going to be accountable for making sure staff is trained, giving them updates when necessary. This is something that in the past was not owned by one specific person, but was kind of the responsibility of all management. A new process flow is created to correct the non-critical errors so that when a mistake does happen, if it's not a mistake that's going to have negative impact to the consumer, then let's move forward with the process, fix it after the fact, and get to the root cause of the problem. But in the meantime, let's not make the customer feel the pain. And thirdly, some enhanced training and mistake-proof templates. They're created to really make it more difficult to make a mistake in the first place. That's referred to as poka yoke. You'll see that in some of our lean training too, mistake-proof templates. So in summary, Fishbone's a great tool for identifying root causes to a specific defect. It can be used to identify the root causes to success. We used two examples here. The pizza delivery was, hey, how do we do a good thing better? What are the factors that contribute to that? The real life Transamerica that we used was more defect related. It was how do we avoid this bad thing of a delay to the loan approval process. Either is fine. It just gets your brain thinking about what are those contributing factors. Gives you a good sense of the entire process, including all the hidden inputs that you might not think of otherwise. A lot of us don't necessarily think of metrics right off the top of the head, or machines or places. Those are all good categories just to get your brain thinking of the entire process. So, thank you for checking out our tutorial on Fishbone Ishikawa. I hope you enjoyed this and found it helpful. If so, check out some of our other online video tutorials. Thanks again from the Process Efficiency team.